Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Welcome back to LISN Overtime. I am Dylan Flynn alongside Vinny Matula. Happy Turkey Day, everybody, once again. And welcome back to another episode of the LISN podcast. Vin, we're going to jump right into it. We got very exciting stuff today, including, as everybody can see, in the middle ground. Our first guest on the podcast, we're just going to tease that right now, and we'll come back to it. But we're going to start out with kind of a new thing that we're doing, fan questions, and that's also going to combine with our weekly recap. So, Vin, jump right into it. What are we hitting as our first question?
Yeah, a lot of the JV kids are curious for our opinions on how JV is going to end up, especially in Suffolk County, and there's plenty of teams up there who have made a strong case so far to begin about the halfway point.
Yeah, no, JV it's really exciting to see those kids playing and the potential that they have to come up and make some noise in the varsity division. We've seen a lot of the JV kids translate. Like, we knew Thomas Konkowski and Colin Calbera were going to come up and have success. Yeah. But there's been a lot of JV kids that have come up and have really made a strong impact, and it's nice to see.
Absolutely. Yeah, each of them have made their own mark in some way, shape, or form. And even some of the kids, particularly on Smithtown Hop Hog, when the teams are light, they're called upon, they do their job, and, it's good experience for eventually next year and going forward in their high school playing career.
Absolutely. Somebody that in JV has impressed me from the couple games that I've seen. It's tough for me to watch JV because I'm on the varsity side when I'm doing certain games, but I do get the JV sometimes on Sundays. Right. And Patchogue Medford has really good kids, and it kind of stinks that they don't have a varsity team, but eventually, if they're going to do it, it's going to be with the kids that they have on this squad right now.
Oh, absolutely. And they made their mark last year in freshmen. They really gave a strong showing. And, unfortunately, they go out in the first round to a very strong Half Hollow Hills team. But the core of kids that they have there is special. Alex Gapinoff, Rocco Azara, Jake Strong. They have a really strong group of kids. And they added kids from the draft, too, this year who have really just done their thing, such as Luke Tannenbaum. He was a Riverhead Shore and Wading River kid that they picked up for goal, and he's really made his mark. And, the list goes on for them there. I think they're a really strong team to watch going forward in a couple of years, especially once they're all in that varsity division.
No, I think somebody to keep an eye on especially is Justin Morrissey. He's having a stellar year, 32 points in just 10 games. Unbelievable, leading all of JV scoring, I do believe, if not the Patchogue Medford Raiders.
Yeah.
But both St. Anthony's teams currently residing in that top four, and it's all capped off by the Smithtown Hop Hog Bulls, who have just allowed 11 goals in 10 games, or 11 games rather. So they average a goal a game.
Yeah, Morrissey's up there as far as the league standings go, and then you have, like I mentioned before, the Smithtown kids, Brendan Landrigan's up there, and then the goaltending too. You have Jack Pring, who's doing his thing. He's playing PAL as well. Strong season by him so far, and they're getting contributions throughout the lineup with them too. Again, it's not really just one or two people. Yes, of course, Landrigan and Campo are two of the top scorers on the team, but you go down the list and you see how many kids have scored goals and how many kids are averaging a point per game on that squad, and you throw anyone out there and it seems like they're filling the back of the net.
Yeah, and in 2 weeks, they're going to play Patchogue Medford, so that should be a good game to see those two squads face off for the first time this season. It's going to be interesting to see who can take down that Smithtown Hop Hog team. We've seen them be so dominant in pretty much every division that they're in. Yeah. They have a team in the top 3 in every division, at least one, freshman, JV, and varsity. So all well around defined and dominant squad in the Smithtown Hop Hog system.
Absolutely, yeah. And we thought last year, too, they were one of the teams that we thought it was their division to lose, the JV Bulls squad. And then, of course, Sachem did their thing and handed them their only 3 losses of the season, once in the regular season and then the sweep in the finals, that is. But, again, they look really strong so far. And, again, the two St. Anthony's teams, either one of those teams can beat either one on any given night. I believe when they played each other, that was an overtime win for the Friars Gold squad. So, again, that just attests to the depth that they have across their organization. And, again, the Bulls have a lot of kids that are going to be coming up next year wanting to make their mark on varsity as well.
Absolutely. And the Kings Park Comac Knights JV team isn't too far behind. No. They're actually tied in record with Patchogue Medford. Yeah. And a Kings Park Comac team that is super strong. Going to be losing a couple names next year, but they'll be looking to get some nice reinforcements to really upkeep the success that they've had over the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. Maximus Lazinski is another name that we saw for a game or two at the varsity level. Jack Volpe's playing Broyles Travel. And again, it sounds like a broken record, but the list goes on with all these kids. Brian Prang's another one. He's playing Rebels, I believe, 15U.
Brother of Billy Prang.
Exactly, yeah.
So he has That's interesting how that works because he has that varsity experience of hanging out with his brother. He knows what it takes. His brother has been one of the ultimate successors this season in the varsity division. So he knows what it takes, and he has to follow in those footsteps.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of promise coming up from the JV division. So we think this year's good. It's just going to get better next year and the following years after that because the kids now in varsity are really laying the groundwork for a good, successful future of this league.
Yeah, absolutely. They're setting the tone, and they're saying, this is how you have to play in this division in order to succeed. We saw that with some of the kids that have come, not just with Smithtown, but these other teams as well. Kings Park's had a couple of kids. Even Ward Melville, we saw too. A couple of kids on their team, their JV team have come up. So it's league wide that we see this. You know, it's not just one team where they have like, okay, this is the standard to follow. No, this is the standard to follow throughout the entire division.
Yeah, they rely on their kids when needed. Smithtown, you're right, did do that. Ward Melville's done that. Middle Country's done that a little bit. Northport Huntington's done that. They've brought up JT Caruso, and he's had great success so far this season. Another very impressive player to watch. So, all these teams, it's amazing. There's no lack of depth in any of these organizations.
No, not at all. Not at all. They all do their jobs rather well for each of their programs, definitely.
Absolutely. So let's move to question 2 now. What do we got?
Yeah, a lot of the questions are very similar in the sense of, who's going to win the Suffolk County Varsity Hockey Championship, things of that nature.
We could do halfway predictions. I mean, that we're a little over halfway now, but I mean, we've seen enough.
Yeah.
Who are you feeling? Because you've got Kings Park, who's been wire-to-wire dominant.
Right.
You've got the Bulls that are one of the most solid defensive teams in all of the varsity division.
Right.
East Islip's probably the fastest and most physical. And the Friars are just outright scorching hot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're all doing their own thing. The one thing I will say, though, is as far as Kings Park goes, I think, and I've told you this before, but I'm going to put it out into the open now, I feel like is that if they don't win the county championship, they're going to go up to states and win that, or vice versa. If they don't win states, they'll win Suffolk. I think that's just how it is. I think this is kind of like a last dance kind of feel for them. There was a lot of players that came back this year, and I mentioned this too in the article that I written back in August. I think this is the last opportunity for their core to really make a strong impact. And again, obviously we've seen with their play so far how well that's been, but I think there's a big motivating factor for them as well. And especially if they were to go up against hypothetically like a St. Anthony's in the finals in one of those two, the ratings there would be off the charts.
Yeah, we're going to get more into the top 4. I really want to discuss them in depth because it's been an interesting week, and this is going to come down to the wire, and it's going to be so much fun. Yeah. But I think right now my dark horse pick, and I really can't say that they're dark horse. They've just been really a victim of bad luck and circumstance. But Sachem in that 6th spot right now is pretty lethal. I wouldn't want to play them in the playoffs, especially when Thomas Kankowski comes back and gets healthy. They're, I think, as good as anybody in this varsity division, and they're more than capable of, I think, taking down anyone. They went on a 5-game win streak run of their own, and it really kind of set them up nicely for, like, almost their rainy day stash away of, okay, we have enough wins, we can kind of tread water a little bit, and we can kind of try to start figuring this out. They picked up a big win against Smithtown where they just took advantage of a Bulls team that was a little bit on its heels, kind of trying to tread through some injuries of their own, some discomforts, trying to balance the lineup, figure out where people were playing. They had rotations of every night trying to figure out who was going to play where on George Zarugian's lineups. And Sachem just caught them in the first period. They took advantage of some interesting turnovers and, came out with a punch after getting it almost figured out against an East Islip team that was no easy task. And they got a big win that has kept them at 500.
Yeah, big 3-goal first period for them in that contest. And, we go back to before. We talked to John LaRochester, the head coach of Sachem, a few weeks back. And we were talking, hypothetically now, the first round is East Islip Sachem. You really think East Islip wants to play Sachem in the first round? Absolutely not, especially when everyone's going to be healthy and everything. And that's an even bigger win for Sachem against Midtown because they still were without Thomas Kankowski. And they had contributions from up and down the lineup. It wasn't just Colin Calbert who scored a hat trick or had all 3 points or what have you. All three goals came from 3 different goal scorers, and that's what kind of separates them apart. So, obviously the time now is past, and obviously we're expecting Thomas Kankowski to come back soon. And they've held their ground at that 500 mark. They're right there in that 5-6 with Connecticut. So I think they really made an impact so far as how they've been able to handle the pressure without their leading point scorer, essentially.
Absolutely. They've missed him, certainly. But they've gotten contributions from Colin Calibera. Yeah. They've missed Christopher O'Hay a couple games. Matthew Gandolfo's been absent from a bunch of games. So Coach Rochester definitely knows what he's missing, and I think he has to be not happy, because you never want to lose games, but you just know that there's the silver lining of once we get everybody back, we're a full force team.
Absolutely.
They've started to figure it out on the defense. That was a very impressive put together game from against Smithtown from a defensive standpoint, because they gave up a power play goal to Bobby Trites early in the second, and it was 3-2.
Yep.
And then you were just waiting for the shoe to drop. Yeah. And it never did. They held their ground. Giulietti came up with big saves, and they were able to pull that game out. And like we've talked about, that's points that you should be getting maybe if you have your fully fledged, healthy roster.
Of course.
But they didn't, so you're stealing a point there. Stealing 2 points there. Yeah. That down the road, maybe that's the difference in, you play the 5 seed, the 4 seed, or anything higher.
Yeah, 2 things to take away there is that you steal 2 points, you don't give Smithtown any points, and you still have that third matchup to go with them. So now the season series is tied at 1. You know you're going to have Konkowski back for that third game in January, I believe, early February, whatever the case might be. So, if Sachem continues to stay the course and get within a point or two of Smithtown, that game in January could be the difference between a 4th seed or a 5th seed, one of those two, even a 3 or 4, however you look at it. That's a big head-to-head matchup now.
Yeah, the having the home ice isn't talked about enough, because you want to be able to set your matchups how you want them.
Absolutely.
But all right, let's move. What do we got for the next fan question?
So we talked a little bit about JV before. We've obviously circled back to varsity now. We've actually got a freshman question. Who's going to win the championship there in freshman? And I feel like that's really interesting, too, because that's another division where there's a lot of teams. Varsity is our lowest division with just 10 teams now. And we go into freshman. We get a little less than JV, but more than varsity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got 12 teams as opposed to the 10 varsity. And then they're just under the 13 in JV. Right.
Yes.
Yes, so they're just missing one St. Anthony's team. But they do make up for it in the Bulls team.
Right.
The second Bulls team, so
blue and red. Yep.
So who has the extra? Is it Longwood?
No,
it is Longwood.
Yep.
Longwood does not have a freshman team. They're developmental. Okay, yeah. So St. Anthony's there is they're like Smithtown in the JV division, cream of the crop, undefeated right now. Sachem again is good, and it's just ridiculous. Like you see the continuities of like Smithtown, Sachem, St. Anthony's, all in that top peak. Kings Park is right there. East Islip has a pretty good squad, but again, Patchogue Medford 7-2-1 freshman hockey. Yeah, Patchogue Medford's going to be good soon, man. They're going to come up here and they're going to have kids and talent. I hope they can put together a varsity roster.
Yeah,
and if we're able to see it next year, I think that would be phenomenal, because I think adding that team to this varsity division, as competitive as it already is, to add another team to the mix, it would be so phenomenal to be able to watch them.
The one thing we can count on when Pat Med plays, whether it be JV or freshman, is that those fans are always electric in that building. They always bring the energy. They're always standing up on their feet, whether they're winning 5-2 or they're losing 5-2. You know what I mean? They have a really strong group, and there's a strong bond there in that kind of team, and just the community as a whole. They're not really recognized as this hockey powerhouse of a school, but I think you give them 2 to 3 years, and I think they could be one of the top varsity teams within the county, in my opinion.
I think they definitely could, with names like Michael Marturiello on the freshman squad in Pat Med, Ryan Helbig. They have 4 10-point plus scorers, so they're definitely equipped. They have Gabriel Vignato, another PAL player. They're definitely equipped to put together a squad in a couple years that can go toe-to-toe with, I believe, some of the bigger teams in the varsity division.
Absolutely.
It's just a matter of getting experience, age, maturity, and making sure you have the team that's prepped to play in this division. Yeah,
the development starts now, and you kind of grow with it. Obviously some of those kids on Pat Med played freshman last year. They're staying this year. JV kids played freshman last year. So it all depends as far as skill level goes, obviously. But again, you're gaining this experience through time, and it kind of helps your overall growth into the future.
We talked about it in Nassau. Levittown, Hicksville, East Meadow they decided to forego JV hockey or middle school hockey. They went right to varsity with their team.
Right.
And they're equipped with a plethora of freshman players. Goaltenders are freshmen. We talked about it on the Nassau opening night after that game. That team's going to be good in 3 years.
Absolutely.
They're 3 years away from being a stellar team when those kids are juniors. They've been through the ringer. They're going to have to take it on the chin for the first 2 years. It just is what it is. But they looked pretty good. They looked solid in their first game.
Yeah.
They'll make noise. They'll win games. You know, they're a gritty, youthful, energized bunch. But I think they're just 2-3 years away from being that. You know, now we have it. We have our team. We have our maturity. We have our players.
Yeah.
They've been through it. They know what it takes, and now's the time to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's going to be growing pains in some way, shape, or form when you're faced with a situation like that. You know, they have a strong group there. You know, Owen Hickey's doing a solid start to the year. You know, one of the names that we've seen that we've covered for them so far that's really stood out is Michael Dawson. You know, I believe he's only 15 years old, and he's really making his mark as far as strong defensive effort. He's chipping in whenever he can on the offensive side of things. And, you know, you feel for those goalies a little bit because they're going to face a lot of shots and there's going to be some breakdowns. But as long as you're able to take away positives from that instance and not let the negatives overcome that, then I think the future would be absolutely bright for that team.
It is. Michael Dawson was a very noticeable presence. A definite surprise for such a big-bodied defenseman.
Yeah.
It's like a Kevin Durant type where you don't expect him to be able to handle and shoot the way that he can, but he can, and you don't really question it. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's a miraculous sight to watch.
Absolutely. Yeah, he could be a real leader for that team going forward as well. I think he's one where you could definitely see him take some players under his wing and help them grow as well, including himself, where he's trying to kind of maneuver and figure his way out through this varsity division in Nassau, which we've seen is no easy task by any means.
Absolutely. Let's move to one last question. We have time for it, so let's get one last good one, and then we'll switch gears a little bit.
Yeah, you know, we're getting a little closer towards the a really fun portion of the season as far as all-star teams go. So one of the questions that we've gotten is as far as all-star teams and when they'll be posted and how that works out, really.
Well, if you look at the bottom of the screen, we have a little special announcement, so I'm going to ask everybody to stay tuned to the end, and we'll answer that question for you in a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's swap that out with one more question.
All right. So, you know, a lot of the questions, too, have been about specific teams, like Connect Quad is one, for example, Middle Country, Ward Melville, and we'll get more into those earlier on. But one of the questions that we had as far as, you know, a lot of the talk we talk about is senior players and everything and how, you know, they want to make their impact. But another question that we had, too, as far as junior players, you know, those players who kind of maybe played a year JV in the prior year, and now they've kind of gotten up to the varsity level. So that was one question that we had, too, as far as which junior players that we enjoy watching.
I mean, immediately off the bat, the name that comes to mind for me is Jake Citron, the goaltender on Smithtown Hauppauge.
Yeah.
He is, I guess he's a senior.
He's senior,
now.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I guess I misunderstood
Pavone.
the question. But last year he was good. Luke Pavone has been really good.
Yeah.
TJ Olmschneider has been phenomenal. And I think that's where we should go with this, is he has had a phenomenal season so far.
Yeah.
And he, in your mind, and it's starting to reach my mind, it definitely should reach it more than it has, is becoming the number one goaltender for St. Anthony's. And he may end up leading that team to the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. You know, Ryan Berhart started back on, I believe it was Wednesday against, help me out on this one here. I believe that was
on Wednesday, Sachem.
Yes, that was Sachem, and he got a big win there, only one goal allowed, but still in all, I think especially when the times got tough for St. Anthony's early on, they kind of needed somebody else to help them out. You know, a lot of the talk early on was, okay, Nick DeAndre is playing so well. The offense, you know, questions there. But I think he came in and was just like, hey, you know, I'm going to do my thing, help the team out however I can. And, you know, we really had a wondering of how that's going to go for them early on. Olmschneider now, it's 7 games played. He's played just about the even amount as Berhart has. He's allowed only 12 goals. And I believe he's got 2 shutouts to his credit. Yeah, Northport.
Yes.
And, so he's really been a strong impact for them. And with Berhart being a senior this year, I think, you know, they're doing as much as they can to help groom him for next season, because we just, like we talked about before with their JV team, how the depth is there, that just proves to how strong of an organization that they have going for themselves. So I think this season is just as important as next season will be for him in particular.
Yeah, I think another player for me is Jesse Lemza.
Yeah.
Watching him play, he's gonna be the guy next year for Kings Park. He's had a really good year for them. assist-wise, centering that second line
Right.
on the Knights. Him, Grinelli, Stefan Ledzinski has had a really nice scoring touch in a couple games. He's come up with some big goals for them.
Yeah.
The West Islip front, I'm a super big fan of William Shields.
Yeah.
I think he's a very nice player. I think he complements Kieran Pollard so well. I think it's just been tough for them with losing some players in some instances, not having Pollard for a stretch, not having the Merviaks for a stretch.
Yeah.
But I think that he is a really solid player that down the stretch, you got to look for him to come up with a big goal somewhere, be it set up or just creating, because I think he has that nice scoring touch that it's not so easily developed. It's just like intuition in a sense. He's somebody that I look forward to watching when I call West Islip games.
Yeah, you know who's a really good one too? It's his teammate is Liam Henshaw. You know, strong season last year, 12 goals for him. Led all of the varsity defensemen in that department. He's doing his thing this year. He leads the team this year in assists with 6. He had his one goal this season ended up being the winner against Northport and a big win that they absolutely needed to keep afloat in that 8-9 playoff race conversation. But he's one too, where I think, you know, especially next year, he'll be one that really leads that Lions team.
No, I could see it. I could definitely see it. They're going to need that leading from somewhere, and it's going to come from Kieran Pollard because he's just a sophomore.
Yeah.
So I guess he's excluded from this conversation. Sorry, Kieran. But the last one that I'll bring up is we'll call them the Three Musketeers.
Okay.
Ryan Fleischauer, Matthew Campanola, and Jack Mercado.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know we have somebody in this company that loves watching them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're a real strong group there. They were really the 3 core pieces of that junior varsity team last year, and they're kind of doing their own thing now with the varsity team, especially Fleischauer. You know, if we had to make a way too early 2023-24 prediction, I personally believe that Ryan Fleischauer is going to be the captain of that team next year. I think the way he conducts himself and the way he's able to just lead that offense when you're already surrounded by such talent, being that it could be Campanola, Jung, Keel, Savage, the list goes on and on for them. The talent is absolutely there, but I just think the way he's able to will himself and say, okay, you know, I'm going to do whatever it takes to help this team succeed, I think that's a quality for that coaching staff that can't go unnoticed.
Yeah, no, I can absolutely see that. Their future is very bright, and I think they've done a really nice job this season of showing that even after a little bit of a slow start, we'll say, just showing that it wasn't the Colin Bizel show last year, as dominant as he was in certain games, and, you know, really taking the head on taking that team to the finals. Everyone kind of questioned, like, what were we going to get this year? Because they lost him. They lost a bunch of their other players. The names are countless. And they lost Joey Walsh. So it was like, what are you going to get out of this team this year? And they're in the thick of it. They're still right there. And just one last point. Somebody that I really enjoy watching, Billy Collins, the junior on Northport Huntington.
Absolutely.
They're really set up for success next year with all the juniors that they have. From Brown to Tittle to Collins to Giacoppi being a sophomore, Kraft is a junior, Agafanov is a junior, Ryan Collins is just a freshman, Savaglio's a junior. I could see him being the captain next year.
Absolutely.
So that, you know, the up and coming talent on the junior class, like we talked about the JV class, next year in a weird way could be better than this year.
Absolutely, yeah. This is kind of the season where everyone's kind of getting a feel, especially those juniors, they're getting a feel for what this season is brought, and especially most of them, these juniors, some of them are strong travel kids that we didn't get the pleasure to see last year. Now they're coming in this year and, you know, doing their own thing in this league, and then they'll get a feel for it going forward, and they'll say, okay, you know, this is what it takes to win. There's no easy wins, so to say, in this division, and, you know, it's really, really fun to see so far.
It is very fun to see. And what's really going to be fun is the battle for home ice that's coming up. And we're going to talk for the fight for home ice, meaning the top 4 teams in the varsity division, that currently being Kings Park, Smithtown, East Islip, St. Anthony's in the respective order. They're separated by 2 points.
Yeah, it's incredible. You know, I think if we go back to early October, late September, I don't think we saw St. Anthony's being in that top 4 reign, but obviously, you know, they've been on an absolute heater these last couple of weeks. They've won, 8 of their last 9 now, so it's really good to see for them to get back into that respective category that we've kind of recognized and known them to be, especially early on last year. And, you know, it's one matchup between any of those 4 teams could ultimately, shuffle everything up going into January and say, okay, these late game matchups, they're no joke. That's again, they're all in the top four, so they all have that home ice. But it's the difference between playing a team like Middle Country or Northport, or as opposed to you got to play against SCHSHL or Connecticut Sable.
Yeah, and it's later down the road too when you play in the semifinals. You know, maybe it's the top 4 teams that qualify. Maybe it's the 4 teams that are there right now. It's Kings Park, it's Smithtown, it's Comac. It's East Islip, and it's St. Anthony's. Who are you getting home ice against?
Yeah.
Is Kings Park going to be able to make the changes that they want against St. Anthony's? Right. Because last year, you meet them in the semifinals and you just catch a bad break, and that's how you lose that game. But you're right there, and maybe the difference is, you get to put Mikey Brazel out there against, the second and third lines of St. Anthony's instead of the DeAndre Cotta, DeLugos line, where, DeLugos can kind of body up Mikey Brazel, and, you just got to be able to have that. It's going to be subtle advantages that's what's going to come down to, because some of these teams are just so evenly matched.
Absolutely. And last year too, with that game being back and forth, 2-1, 2-2, 3-2, 3-3, and then that last goal comes 40 seconds left into the game, and then that's the difference maker there. So it's not just a long game. It's also you take it one shift at a time, and you see what kind of impact you have when especially you have to match up with certain lines that you'd rather not be out there, or you think this line matches up with another. I think that's a real underrated part of this league that's not really talked about, especially this year with how competitive everyone's going to be going down the road.
No, anybody's capable of beating anybody. I firmly believe that this season. And it's going to really be tested here, because East Islip now currently sits in 3rd place because of the goals against tiebreaker to Smithtown. All top 4 teams have 8 wins.
Yeah.
So it's Kings Park 8-2-1, Smithtown 8-3-1, East Islip 8-2-1, and then St. Anthony's 8-4-0.
Yeah.
And East Islip now has to play Kings Park on the 30th.
Yep.
So that's coming up in a couple days. I think that's Wednesday.
Yes.
It's Wednesday. And then they get a couple weeks off, and then they play Smithtown, and then they get 9 days off, and then they play St. Anthony's right before Christmas. So that is make or break time for East Islip. You are either vaulting yourself into no doubt contention for the 1 seed, or you could find yourself now at the bottom of that pack in 4th place, or you could, for some reason, find yourself still in the middle of it.
Yeah, and we got the Battle of Islip coming up on Monday, too. I think those kids on West Islip will absolutely be motivated after losing by a real decent amount there. I think it was 7-1 last time. So I think that's one where you got to watch out for, too. And then just one more point on East Islip, too. They played against Connecticut, I believe it was 2 Sundays ago, the 13th. And that's the one they drop in regulation. So if they take that game, we're talking with them as the first place team today. But unfortunately, Connecticut comes out and takes it to them in that contest after Connecticut had lost by a healthy amount early on in the season against them. So I think that's one where you look back on later on in the season. If you're not in that fourth seed, if you drop to that 50, you say, okay, that's one where we could have had that one. That even if you get a point in that one, you know what I mean? There's no shortage of anything there. But they have an important stretch coming up here, and the Kings Park game is one to watch too, because again, that's one where they lost by a healthy amount to them. And a lot of the games that we've seen in these second matchups, they've been a lot closer, which is kind of what we were predicting earlier on in the season, where the defense was going to come into form and say, okay, we're going to have a lot more of these 3-2, 2-1 contests, where early on in the season everyone was kind of finding their footing and seeing how teams were playing, and the list goes on, such and such. But I think that's really important to note there, is these second matchups and how each team comes out in them.
Yeah, it is, because it makes a difference, because these games are so important now. Kings Park taking that first game against East Islip. East Islip now needs to get that second game in case it comes down to it for a tiebreaker. Their defenses are both really good. Their goaltending is really good.
Yeah.
I think Kings Park has a little bit of the scoring edge.
I agree.
But I think East Islip really came out and played better 5-on-5 hockey against Middle Country the other day.
Absolutely.
And we're going to touch on that game in a little bit, especially the Middle Country side. But I think that's what the formula needs to be for them. They need to use this West Islip game. You got to try to figure out your 5-on-5, however Absolutely. It may go. because West Islip's coming off a big win where Braden Buccino stood on his head and took them to victory because both teams were ready to roll. There's no excuse of tiredness or PAL games. Like, these kids aren't fazed by that stuff.
No.
So Northport came out firing on all cylinders, ready to go from the jump, and they were shots. And Buccino held them in that game, West Islip.
Yeah.
And they got good breaks.
Of course.
Schubert's not able to clear out a puck. It's found right in front of the net and put home by Conti. Aiden Conti coming up with a big goal in that game. So that was a big win for West Islip to be able to pull that out, kind of keep them in the mix for the 8th seed.
Right.
But in terms of staying with this top 4, Smithtown was on a little bit of a skid, kind of leaving us scratching our heads, leaving George Zarugian looking for some answers, but they seem to have found something against Ward Melville.
Yeah, definitely. And we talked to him a little, or at least I talked to him before the Ward Melville game, and that game against Ward Melville was a lot more important than some people think, because you take into account they lose to Sachem, they lose to St. Anthony's, both in regulation. If that Kings Park Comac game stands, they're technically on a 3-game losing streak. So he comes out, plays his best guns. He plays Citron and net because, word for word, like he said, I need to get a win tonight. Like, there's no fooling around. You need a win tonight. And one thing that we've noticed too, that was the first time all season Smithtown had their full team, full healthy team, mind you. And again, Ward Melville had their pieces there as well, besides Chris Hintz not being there. And, Smithtown came out as if like it didn't matter to them who Ward Melville had. They came out guns a-blazing. They had the 2 goals early on in the first, and then it followed suit with them the rest of the way. And the thing that we've been preaching all season is you get contributions up and down the lineup. Colin McMillan gets a goal early on. Noche had, I believe, was 2 in that game.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Nolte had 2.
Yeah, and then we finally see Patrick Nolte come into form late in the third period. That was one player that was really one to watch, at least in my opinion, for the Bulls this year. And, he's getting on the score sheet finally. And, when they're at their best and full strength, you see right then and there what it does for them. And, it's a running clock win over Ward Melville.
Yeah, the offense was really paced in that first 2 minutes. I can't talk about it enough. Just the impressive shift that was taken by Bobby Trice to open that game.
Yeah.
He was on the score sheet a couple times. He had a goal late, and he had an assist. But I think he really just went into that game and had the mindset of the offense has to get going.
Yeah.
And he didn't care what it was going to take. He got in there and he was throwing shots at the net, just really leading by an example of this is how we're going to have to do it tonight.
Yeah.
We have to throw shots at the net.
Right.
And their defense really held strong in that game.
Yeah.
Obviously, they threw the combined shutout up between Citron and Pavone, their second of the season. But the defense did such a phenomenal job of getting the puck going the other way. I can't really remember a big stretch of sustained offensive zone time for Ward Melville in that game.
No, they really did a fine job closing off, especially inside, because those players like Hobbs, Clifford all like to operate inside, and when they get that inch of room inside, they're not going to let up, and they're going to take any chance they possibly can. There were a couple chances early on that Citron had to be strong with, especially down low with pad saves that he made sure that he covered up and everything. But I think once 2-0 going into the second period, I think the Bulls were able to say, okay, we have the momentum. Let's keep it. Let's not be satisfied with just 2-0 because, again, a 3-game losing streak, you can't let it go more than that, especially when you're so high up in the standings that if it spirals anything more than that, then, maybe the panic alarms start going off. And, I think that's where, you have to keep that sense of urgency going, which they did. And they proved that, when they're healthy and they're playing their best, which they obviously did against Ward Melville, that they're going to be one of those top teams to be reckoned with going forward.
They are. They're one of the better defensive teams in the division. And they're going to be going forward. Yeah. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with in the playoffs. And now, with Kings Park Comac, they play Northport Huntington on Monday, and East Islip plays West Islip Monday, and then East Islip and Kings Park play each other on Wednesday. So there's going to be a lot of in that little pack battling. Smithtown's going to be off, so they're going to get to sit back and watch this all unfold a little bit. They last played on the 21st, that win over Ward Melville, and now they don't play again until the 5th of December, a week from Monday, against Northport Huntington.
Right.
So they'll be able to relax, kind of really reinforce what they did in that game after coming off a tough loss to St. Anthony's, who was on one of the hottest streaks we've seen in a long time. So we'll see if the Bulls can continue the success they had against Ward Melville now, because they're going to kind of ramp it up. You're going to play Northport Huntington, who's a little better than Ward Melville, and then you're going to play East Islip a week later, which is a really good test to see where do we stand. Yeah. Is this working? Is this going to be the formula going into the playoffs? Because if you can replicate what they did in that game against Ward Melville, that's the Smithtown Bulls team that has to come out and will be a contender for a championship.
Absolutely. Both those teams, Smithtown, Hauppauge, East Islip, when they played each other, won one game, tied. I don't think we expected anything different, quite honestly. I think the style that they play is very similar, and both of those goaltenders, Citron and I believe it was Dixon that played in that game, they both played stellar, which, again, we didn't expect anything less. That's how they've played all season. That's how they've made their money so far this year, as far as being one of the top 4 teams in this standing. So I think that's one where, that extra point is huge going forward. And the fact that it's left on the table there, I think that's an extra motivating factor for their next contest.
No, that's definitely an interesting matchup, because that one's weird where now it really is whoever wins that game wins the tiebreaker. Because it's, nobody has the tiebreak as of right now. You're even. It's a goals against thing. Where it's Smithtown with the advantage.
Right.
But it's going to be interesting, because I've really been trying to figure out how to beat St. Anthony's, and I think the Bulls have what it takes. I think East Islip does too. You have to take the puck away from them. All they've done over this 6-game winning streak and their 7-1 stretch is just possess the puck.
Exactly.
They just possess the puck, and it's so hard to take it away from them.
Right.
Their lone loss was against East Islip. So, that was when they were still trying to figure it out. But once they played that game against Northport where they shut them out, it was all systems are go. And they've been on a tear. So you got to be able to take the puck away from them. It's like football. You got to keep the offense on the sideline.
Correct.
And you're not going to be able to keep Nicholas DeAndrea and Brady Monteleone and Gavin Cotta on the bench, but you can take the puck off their stick.
Exactly. You got to make them play
defense. If you
defense.
can take the puck off their stick, that's the key to beating them, because their goaltending is really good. But I want to see it face a rain of shots. I want to see East Islip come out and do what they did against Middle Country, throwing 48 shots at the net. How is TJ Olmschneider going to respond to 48 shots? He's thrown 2 shutouts this season, but how is he going to respond to 48 shots? How is Ryan Burhart going to respond to 48 shots? How are the players going to respond to the physicality of East Islip? Are they going to be able to move in space and possess the puck? Because you got to take the puck away from them. That's how you have to beat them.
Absolutely. And the one other thing I will say about St. Anthony's, we mentioned this when they were going through their struggles offensively, is that one thing that you and I agreed upon is that they weren't throwing, St. Anthony's being that they weren't throwing a lot of challenging shots on net. I think they've kind of did a 180 on that. I think, any chance that they have, especially in the offensive zone, that they're throwing those pucks on net. And as far as the goals for department goes, I think it's really shown. They're leading the way now. It's 64 goals for this season. And I think they've really... I don't know if they went back and listened to us say this by any means of the imagination, but I think their offensive game has looked significantly different as far as how they go about their attack. And I think, of course, that starts with the puck possession like you've just talked about.
In their wins this season, I'm just looking at it right now. They, one win has come where they scored less than 5 goals.
I was going to
say.
So
they've turned it on.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They've absolutely turned it on. And the one they won narrowly, if you want to say it, was 3-2 in overtime over Kings Park Comac. That's how you're gonna have to win that game. That's absolutely not going to be a track. No. It could be a track meet, but I just don't think that it's equipped to be a 10-9 game. I think that in the playoffs and in the second meeting, it's going to be that 2-1, 3-2, 4-3 kind of game. Unless something crazy happens.
Exactly. Yeah. Or like we saw with that Northport Kings Park game where that was 4-1 or whatever the case might have been and went to 6-6 as a tie. That's one of those where, especially on Monday, we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, we will. But yeah, I think we'll transition now to the other side of the standings. So I think that's going to be a good point to start this up. So we're going to transition to the bottom of the standings, but first we have our first guest on the podcast. Pleased to be joined now by the goaltender for the Middle Country Cougars, Michael Sittler. Mikey, how you doing today, dude?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're doing well. Happy Thanksgiving, man.
Thank you. You too.
So, dude, you've had a pretty eventful week. A tough loss against East Islip, but you stopped 43 shots absolutely incredible. How were you able to stay locked in through that whole game because the shots were coming fast and furious at you?
Yeah, I mean, you really just don't think, if that makes sense. Like it's not in the top of my head about the shots that I'm facing. It's just I got to give my team a chance to win. So that's really the main thing.
Mikey, it's Vinny here. Just a question for you about last season too. Last year on that Middle Country JV team, you guys faced a lot of shots, and you were kind of counted on to clean up a lot of the mistakes defensively. Do you feel like that was used to your advantage at all last season?
Yeah, definitely. That's always more shots is like looked at as practice, so that when, you're on a better team, you can help your team a lot more. So yeah, JV definitely helped a lot.
I can see how that helps. So, does that help at all? Like in the next game, you had a quick turnaround of just 2 days, and that's not something that you see a lot in the varsity division. So, what does it take to bounce back from a tough loss like that, where you had a lot of success, and then you have to go into another game and you get that big win? What does it take to do that?
You really just don't think about it. It's like it's always in your head about, you want to win, but against East Islip we obviously lost. But, it was looked at as we played really well that game. And then against Connequa even, that was probably our best game of the season. So I think that I don't know, a bounce back it just like happens. You got to be in the right mindset.
Yeah, definitely. Well, your goaltending partner there, CJ Lucente, obviously playing some really strong hockey with Junior Islanders elite, and with him being a senior and everything, what have you kind of learned from him so far at just about the halfway point so far this season? What do you feel like you've taken away from him? What has he taught you? Is there anything that he's been able to teach you that you've equipped to your game at all?
Yeah, he's a really good goaltender, and he sees things in my game. Like I forgot which game it was. I think it was against KPC, and he saw that they were going up high on me when I'm like down, and he told me to keep my head by the post. That's just an example, but he's definitely helped me a lot, and he's very good.
That's great that he's able to help you out. I know that plays a big part in a lot of sports. Just veteran leadership. You can never have too much of that, and I'm sure you'll be that one day. But for right now, how does it feel to be helping Middle Country towards one of their best seasons in the program's history?
You know, you that's amazing. Honestly, it's really cool to be a part of it. We haven't made the playoffs in a very long time, and if we're able to get back in there, it would be nice to be a part of this team.
Yeah, definitely. And we talked about a little bit before about CJ and how he's playing a high level with the Junior Islanders elite, but yourself is also playing with the Long Island Edge in that 16U double A bracket. How do you feel like that kind of like intensity of travel hockey is kind of impacting your game as well? Because that's a very competitive division you're in. You're going against the 16U Junior Islanders, who got a really strong squad as well. I think you guys have played them at least once this season. So, what do you feel like you've taken away from that kind of play to your season this year?
Yeah, travel hockey is taken very seriously. So, it's like it's very intense. So when I bring it to the high school league, I know a lot of people like Campanola on the T-Birds. He's fun to mess around with. But yeah, I mean, it makes it like really easy because you make so many friends on travel, and then you play them in the school league or they're on your team. So, like I met Schuerman. He was on my team a while ago, and now I'm best friends with him again. So it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, one of the cool things I know I do, I don't know how you feel, Dylan, but one of the cool things we love seeing in the games is when in warm-ups all the kids go next to each other at center ice and take those pictures after the game. Those are memories that you hold on to for the rest of your life, really.
Yeah, yeah, that's happened to me. I think over the past like a few games, Hughes came up to me after the last game, and then there was Brody, um, and then there was Burhart. That's I know so many people, and it's fun to play against them.
No, it's definitely cool. I know sports have helped me make a lot of friendships and connections, and it's always cool. Like you play with kids on travel that you play against in school. You play with kids on school that you play against in travel, and it's always nice to see familiar faces down the road.
Yeah.
But no, so we keep it on the teammates. Who on Middle Country is like your like go to for like a laugh in the locker room? Who's keeping it light on the bench? Who's got the best sense of humor? Because we love that stuff here.
I think for me, there's a lot. Our whole team is we got a great sense of humor. But for me, it's Brandon Schuerman because I've been friends with him. He was on my PAL team a while ago. but we hang out a lot. We're playing NHL 23 a lot. He's a really good friend of mine, and I'm happy to have him in my life.
All right, be honest. Are you the best NHL player on the team?
I mean, between me and Brandon, yes.
And I just have one last one. Rangers or Islanders?
I might make a few people mad, but let's go Islanders, baby.
All right,
Yeah. See, I got the Varley T-shirt on for you today. Feeling.
I got Sorokin hanging up in my room right now.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a good man right there. All right. Vin, you got anything else for him?
No, I think we're good. This has been fun, Mikey, and just want to wish you best of luck the rest of the way. And I know Dylan's really pulling you guys for the 8th seed. I think this race towards the end is going to be really a really fun one.
Yeah, all right. Thank you guys very much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. And best of luck the rest of the way. I'm pulling for you guys now after those wins. It's been fun to watch you all season. So good luck with the playoff push, and can't wait to see what you guys can pull off in the back half.
All right, thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Take it easy.
Thanks, Mikey.
A big thank you to Michael Sittler for joining us. He's had a phenomenal season.
Absolutely.
And I just think that he is really leading the way along with CJ Lucente for this middle country run at the bottom part of the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. They've both done their own part now, and we wondered going into that second game that they played against Connecticut on Wednesday if they were going to go back to Sittler or not after 43 saves and a tough loss. Unfortunately, CJ wasn't there, so they kind of had no choice but to go to Mikey. But I still think he played well in that game regardless, too. He's really led the way with his play, only this being his...
Was it really a bad choice?
No, it wasn't. No.
No.
I don't mean to cut you off, but we've seen it too. You ride the hot hand in this league, and you see where the heights can take you in that sense. And obviously with them, you get 2 points after where you could have stolen a point against East Islip.
Yeah, no, you absolutely could have. And I just want to say thank you again to Michael Sittler for joining us. Yeah. Great to have him on as the first guest. It was a pleasure to interview him and really get his insight into that team and what makes them a little more successful than they've been over the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. 3-9, sitting in that 8 seed right now. They're really starting to turn it on. Mm-hmm. And like you said, they could steal a point. They could have stolen a point from East Islip. And I'll touch on 2 things here. The win over Connecticut Sayville did not surprise me. It didn't surprise me.
Me neither.
And people want to say, like, oh, they didn't have Matteo Marchese. I don't care if he was there or not. They would have beaten him anyway. Yeah. I'm going to say it. They would have beaten him anyway. Because Middle Country, what they're starting to do now that I'm seeing, is they're really learning from their first meetings with teams. Yeah. The Northport-Huntington game was still played close. They played them really close in game 1.
Of course.
But they played them really well in game 2. And sure, they were down people. But I don't think it matters.
No.
East Islip was played much closer.
Absolutely.
That game was 0-0 after 1 period, and they were in it right to the end.
Yeah.
And, the East Islip team, they have their superstars where they'll, be able to take over games. Ryan Anatra had some goals. Dominic Magro had 2 goals. Yeah. Andrew Wurst scored a goal. So those guys are really good players. But Middle Country is a hard-fighting, fast, grind it out, fight to the end type of team. And they were close with Connecticut Sayville. They lost in overtime to them. Yeah. So when I saw that matchup on Wednesday, I looked at it and I'm like, this can be a really good game. It's not. I don't think Connecticut Sayville is the outright favorite in this. I thought Middle Country had a really good chance to win. And when I looked at the app later to check the score and just kind of see what was going on because I wasn't there, when it was 2-0 Middle Country, I wasn't surprised in the least.
You took the words right out of my mouth as far as them playing against Connecticut, because in that first meeting we saw that I believe they were down in that meeting, or they were up and it was tied. Obviously they lose in overtime. So yeah, no, I totally agree with you in the sense that I wasn't really surprised. Again, does Matteo Marchese help Connecticut Sayville's case in that game? I absolutely believe he does. Again, they were missing George Vadyak as well. Those are 2 defensemen at the end of the day. We can call a spade here on the podcast, but at the same time, Middle Country is playing good hockey right now. That's a known fact. The guys in the locker room know that for them. We know that. I think everyone who's been watching that team this season they know that. Again, the record doesn't really show that right now. But again, you look at their last 4 games, they have points in 3 out of 4 of them. That's where it goes. And listen, we've said it early on in the podcast and early on in the season. In this league, it's not how you start. I'm going to say it again. In this league, it is not how you start a season. It is how you finish. That's how Connecticut Sable made their money last year, and it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if that's how Middle Country makes their money this season.
No, absolutely not. And watching Michael Sittler play this past week, especially in the East Islip game, it's not like they're. I'm not going to crown them the overwhelming favorites now, but I think they're much more competitive and respectable than they were to open the season when they started 0-8, because they were really good. We were really impressed by them to open the season, but we just really weren't sure what to expect. But I think if you're the East Islips, the Kings Parks, and the Smithtowns of the world, and the St. Anthony's, you have to be a little bit scared now if you're going to face them in the playoffs, because that's a team that will get up for a game energized, and if you run into a hot goaltender, there's nothing you can do. You are screwed. Not like in like the you're gonna lose automatically sense, but you see, like, it takes them one bounce to get back into a game. Aiden Asmund in the East Islip game, down 3-1, throws a puck at Corey McGovern, hits off his blocker, takes a weird bounce. Asmund follows the play, slots it in. It's 3-2, and Michael Sittler's playing out of his mind. So East Islip in that moment had to be like, "Oh my gosh, are we gonna lose this game?" Yeah. They hustle, man. They don't care.
No.
They're so physical, so fast on the puck.
Yeah.
They just grind, and it showed in that Connecticut Sable game, hustling to the front of the net, tapping pucks home, just throwing shots on net. You know, that's why I think, like, Marchese being there, maybe he steps up in a spot, and maybe he denies one goal.
Each team gets a point.
Yeah, and maybe it's another goal. Maybe it does change a little bit. But I just think that the way that they play with the hustle and the desire and just the will to go get the puck, I don't think one player is making a difference in that game.
A common theme we hear in sports is that, yes, Connecticut Sable may have a little more on the talent side, but talent doesn't win you games. It's that effort and that competitive drive. This whole Middle Country team, especially these last 3-4 games, they have that no-quit attitude. They keep going regardless of what the score says. I think that's the shining difference there. Those first 7 or 8 games, when they had gotten down 4-5-0 or 6-1, whatever the score might have been, I think they were down on themselves at that point, where I think now, like you said before, they make it a 1-goal game against these guys. I firmly believe those East Islip kids were like, "Oh, come on, how have we not broken through at this point?" And that frustrates an offense, especially with that team where you have guys down the lineup in Anantra, Ivers, Magro. Those kids are going to get frustrated. Come on, we really can't beat this kid. Like, it takes 40 saves to get more than 3 goals past him.
Especially with a team that takes so many penalties. I touched on that the power play was going to be there for Middle Country. It was there. They just. It wasn't their day that day. They just couldn't get it, all the way back on the offensive front. But the games that they're gonna have to win are those close games where Sittler and Lucente make 30 saves, 40 saves, and they win a game 3-2, 2-1, overtime. They're comfortable. They're comfortable coming back. And where it's really going to matter coming up is December 7th when they play West Islip in Game 2 of that series. That is the only other meeting they're going to have with that team this season. But it has playoff implications all
It sure does.
over it.
It sure does. And that's another one where in the first matchup it's 2-1 going into the third, and we wondered, is this a comeback of ruin, or is West Islip going to pull away? And West Islip ultimately pulls away. But I think you look at it now, and it's kind of ironic to say, I think Middle Country is feeling more confident about themselves now going into that matchup than maybe in that exact moment where it was only 2-1 and they were only 1 goal away from tying it.
You absolutely should. You've picked up wins now. Yeah. You've beaten really good teams. Northport Huntington, Connecticut Sable. You've beaten 2 really good teams that are just ahead of you in the playoff race. You're fighting for your playoff lives, and all you have to do is get in. So this game on the 7th, after they play Sachem on the 4th, is a really big test and a really big game for them, because that could really solidify their playoff positioning. And all it takes is just creating a little bit of a gap, and I think they have it.
Yeah, absolutely. Their guys are all playing well, and it's not just these 1 or 2 players really for them that have made the difference so far. We talked about the hustle and bustle, and it's not just, Asmund's had a lot of the lights on him because he scores a tying goal in one game, scores a winner in another. Whitbeck's one where he's hustling all up and down the ice offensively, defensively, so I think these games for them really mean a lot, and especially that West Islip game, being that it's only the other time they're going to play each other, and they're 1 point separated. That's the difference right there. And maybe that's the game where they're watching at home in February. Maybe the game that's where they're playing in February. We'll have to see.
Yeah, and you want to be playing in February because otherwise you don't have a chance.
Yeah.
But I mean, we talked about how running into the hot goaltender is a problem. Lucente and Sittler, one of the better goalie tandems in the league. Who's your favorite goaltender tandem to watch? Because I know we've had the Pavone-Citron combined shutout. This past week. That was their second one. So there's a lot of really good tandems in the league. Who's your favorite goaltender tandem to watch?
I think one, especially as far as consistency goes, is probably the East Islip tandem. I think they really had a strong start to the season, and I think that's really carried them out through the rest of the way. I mean, it's not – neither one of those guys essentially have to come out and make 40 saves a night. And again, that's credit also to their defensive style of play too. But I think that's an example where they can roll it out with confidence, say, okay, this is what we're getting. Our defense is going to support you all in all. As long as you make the saves we need you to make, then I think that's one where, you feel really good about your chances in any game that they play. And it's not just them, too. There's other teams. Kings Park, Comac, they've gotten contributions from Connor McGrain as well coming up from JV. He's done his thing when called upon. So I think those are two teams in particular where the defense around them is really helping out, but I think those goalies are confident about their own play as well.
No, and they should be. Those guys have done a phenomenal job when called upon. McGrain's done a really good job. I looked at his stats the other day, the few stats that Hardcap's on goaltenders in this league. He has a 2 goals against average. TJ Olmschneider, I think, is below 2.
Yeah,
I think he's in the 1-4,
I think.
I'll get the exact number right now. He's 1-8.
Okay.
But still, that's ridiculous.
You're going to win a lot of games if you're putting up that
He's
kind of
played
number.
in 7 games, started 6, a 1-8-7. Like, it's... you're not losing many games like that. I think Kanakwa Sayville is an interesting one. They have a goalie trio where they have Hughes, Tolikowski, and Keel. Hughes is probably the outright number 1 there, but then your Tolikowski and Keel backups, that's interchangeable at that point.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to watch there. The Buccino Winter combination down at West Islip. Buccino again carrying West Islip to that victory. That's just another example of you run into a hot goaltender against a team that maybe only needs a lucky bounce or two. There's gonna be no sympathy for a really good scoring team that just can't beat a hot goaltender that day. Northport Huntington, there was no sympathy for them not being able to beat Braden Buccino. West Islip went and took that game from them. They rode their goaltender, got a lucky bounce here and there, and walked out of there with a win.
Yeah, that's 2 points that they're more than thankful to have, especially with this being the Thanksgiving season and all. But especially in their case, that range between 8 and 10, we've sound like broken records, of course, with how close it is. They're ones that need those 2 points more than Northport does, essentially, in the sense that, we got to make our own case. Now, Middle Country's making their own case. Ward Melville's not going to be an easy out in any of these games they play in with that strong group that they have. That's 2 points for West Islip where you say, thank you, take it and run, go to the next game, and, Monday's big for them.
No, you absolutely should, because now you have that, like I said, the matchup coming up against Middle Country where that 2 points looms large, because if you win, now you have your outright points lead, but you also have the season series. So now Middle Country has to once again try to leapfrog you in terms of just outright, points and winning it.
Right.
So yeah, they play a couple games before they play Middle Country. Excuse me. So they play East Islip, then they play Kanakwa Sayville, and then they play Middle Country. So a couple games to lead up to that. We'll see if they can really right the ship now. Hopefully Pollard and the Merviaks can show up consistently. They can kind of hit their stride a little bit and go into that Middle Country game ready to go, and it's sure to be a good one. The atmosphere is going to be great.
Absolutely, yeah. And we've seen that so far this year with those teams, and how the crowd, especially for Middle Country, is always getting into it, and they have a really strong student section for them, and we'll see a real competitive matchup there, in my opinion.
We will. And where it's really competitive now, we'll switch up gears a little bit. I think we touched on Suffolk a lot. We've seen a lot now from Nassau County. Really has started to cover them. Really have looked at a lot of different teams. They have 18 teams. Am I correct?
17, I believe.
17 teams.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a deeper league. still a lot of combined towns. Nassau has a lot of school districts for such a tight-knit community, but they do have a lot of talent over there, and it's been interesting to watch it all unfold early here because we're so deep into the Suffolk season. It kind of feels weird that we're just watching the first couple games of Nassau.
Definitely. I'm going to go back to here. 18 teams. You were right the first time around. 2 teams have yet to play a game yet this season, but still, it's a real fun race so far early on in Nassau. You got 2 teams so far that have not been beaten just yet, and a good majority of the games that we've covered at least have been rather close games.
Mm-hmm. And we had a fan question. We wanted to cover Bethpage, right?
Yeah, one of the goalies on Bethpage, Matteo Belice, was asking the thoughts on his team so far this season.
Wants to know what we think, huh? I haven't gotten to watch so much Bethpage hockey as much as you have. So I do know that they won an overtime game against Belmore Merrick, a team that we really saw as one of the top contenders in Nassau coming into this year after their stellar regular season last year, and then they beat Port Washington in a shutout, I believe, right? So they've looked strong to start, from what I can see. What are you thinking about?
Yeah, the interesting thing about Bethpage in that Port Washington game, they didn't have a lot of their Royals travel kids. Alex Labos had a really strong game for them in their opener against Belmore Merrick, and I believe there were 2 or 3 other names that I want to just get here before I go more into depth with them. So I think with them, it's really interesting, that especially that second game against Port Washington. Port Washington plays a style where they rely on their goaltender, Marko Vucinovic, a lot to clean up a lot of the mistakes, and he's going to do his thing in his own way. So I think with them, it's really interesting to see. Another name for them being Bethpage. Jake Kelly was another one who had a strong season last year, wasn't there. Stavros was not there for them. He had a lot of game winners for them last year. So I think Bethpage has really picked up the pace early on. It's kind of set the tempo to say, hey, we're one of those teams where, we might not have been up in a lot of people's power rankings at the start of the year, but we're going to prove to you that we are with our play early on.
Yeah. I think that it's going to be an interesting dogfight throughout the Nassau season because there's so many teams that have so many really good players. Like you touched on, Vucinovic of Port Washington. That's another one where all it takes is him being extremely hot. Just everything touches him and doesn't go to the back of the net. And it takes one bounce for Port Washington to win a game like that. Garden City has a really good squad. They have PJ Tercy in net, and they have Alex Bedard, Bobby Seaman, and Patrick Blum, a couple other kids that are really solid players. So they've won a couple games, and they've battled some really tough teams. Their latest game against Roslyn and Ryan Franks, he's just a talent in his own right.
Man amongst boys is what. Yeah, he's a senior for that squad. He's really He's going to be a driving force for that team, and I think with them, they're going to go as far as he goes, as far as point production-wise. And again, he's miles above everybody right now, averaging 4 points a game with them, 8 goals in 3 games, and that's going to be the difference for them. And again, there's other players on there that as well are going to make a difference. Mishko Vaschak, who I believe played for Port Washington last year, he's back with the Roslyn squad this year, and he's going to be a real good complement to them. So I think if they're able to get contributions from other players and that they're able to help him out and kind of limit the offensive workload that he's going to be relied upon to do, I think they could go places as well.
No, they definitely could, and there's teams that are just going to be able to ride players off into the sunset. Rockville Centers look good so far. We've covered them a lot. The Angry Pizza Slices, shout out to our boss Mike Brown. They have, Nicholas Cardy.
Yep.
If he scores, I like to call him Cardy G.
Yeah.
Nicholas Johnson.
The Selly King, I call him.
Oh, yeah. They have a really young goaltender in Sean Barrett. He's looked strong in his first couple showings. Brendan Rose on the defensive end has looked really good. So they have a lot of good players. They're still waiting on their jerseys. I would appreciate that so I can get your names right. But no, there's been a lot of really good teams, and I think what I'm most excited for, just because of what they did last season, obviously, is the debut of Massapequa.
Absolutely, yeah. They played a couple of exhibition games early on. They played Chaminade, had a rough go there. They're still kind of figuring things out as far as their roster goes. I believe we just got that a couple days ago. But yeah, they're going to be a strong group too. And a lot of the kids on that team are also playing travel hockey, whether it be Edge, Lions, Royals. The list is surmountable there, but I think they they've got a real strong core there. I think they want to, of course, the main goal for them at this point is to repeat and get back into that chase where, you have a strong team against Long Beach. They're going to go up against them inevitably, and that's going to be one where the ratings are going to be through the roof for that game.
That's another one that I'm absolutely looking forward to, is if Long Beach is always a fun team to have come down. We saw the Valley Stream Rockville Center game. That had a really good crowd to it. A bunch of the students came down to watch those games. So a really nice student section there. I always do appreciate when students come down. The energy just feels so different. It runs through me, that energy. I love to do it because it gets me up, it gets me going, and it makes the games more exciting.
And the best part about that game, close game the whole way through, and the winner scored 48 seconds left, and we said, oh boy, here comes the noise, and sure enough, the late winner there, but I believe that was Joey Marone on the winner.
It was.
Yep. So that's one where you look and you say, wow, close game the whole way. Valley Stream gets those 2 points over Rockville Center, who again, they in their own right have been playing close competitive games throughout the season. But, it's another one where you have 18 teams, less than half make the playoffs in that sense. So points are no shortage there. There's gonna be opportunities, and it's a matter if you can get those points, or especially early on now.
Yeah, and we saw a lot early, which was very interesting. Shutouts.
Yeah,
I've not been shy.
Right.
They've come dime a dozen pretty much. Something we didn't see in the Suffolk League too often. It was very interesting. Opening night, the first Sunday that we covered, 2 shutouts. Right off the bat, okay, here it is. So it is it's a little bit of a different play style in terms of Nassau being a physical, hard-hitting type of defensive presence, where it's very similar to East Islip.
Yeah,
they hit, they play fast, and if the puck goes in the back of the net, it goes in the back of the net. But we're gonna cream you first.
Absolutely, yeah. There's not much. It's again another ironic thing to say. There's not much room to operate when you're out there, especially on the offensive side of things, because kids close off a lot quicker in that league, and we've seen it so far as physicality goes, and I think just the way teams in that league are comfortable playing, whether it be down a goal or just tied the whole way. There's not a lot of room to say, okay, let's get into these 6-6 blowouts or anything like that. It's a lot more intense, fierce, and this is the league in particular where there's no 2 matchups. Each team plays once. It's a 17-game season, so you go up against that team one time only before the playoffs. So that's all you get out of them. It's very interesting in that regard as well.
It is very interesting. And yeah, we're learning more and more every day about this Nassau League. Something that we're becoming more well versed in as the days go by. Suffolk, we're pretty well versed. This is my second year working Suffolk hockey, your second year working Suffolk hockey, LISN's third year covering Suffolk hockey. So we're becoming more and more familiar. It's always appreciative to see everybody taking an interest in it, and the more kids that engage, the better. And now that we're really getting in deep with Nassau, it's very interesting to see how that there is a differentiating style, and you wouldn't really assume that because, like you said, some of these kids play travel. And we've seen the kind of cross referencing with interactions from Nassau to Suffolk, some of these kids, because they play together on travel. So it's very interesting to see that there's differentiating play styles in school, but then they play together on travel.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a different cross like that. You would think it kind of carries over into one league or another, and it does in some way, shape, and form. But it's just how what it takes in each league to win those games and to stay in these close matchups is the difference maker.
It is. So yeah, they're going to be going for a while. We're halfway through the Suffolk season. Nassau is just starting, but with that being the halfway point in the Suffolk season, there's things that come with the halfway point in the Suffolk season. Vin, and you brought up a question before. Somebody asking about the All-Star game.
Right.
Well, everybody. Very special announcement, as you can see. In regards to that question that I kind of dismissed before a little bit, we have, for everybody, the next episode of LISN Overtime is going to be an All-Star Game selection show. We will be announcing the All-Star selections for the Suffolk County High School Hockey League right here on the podcast, Vin and I. We're going to have a couple special guests come on down. We'll talk to them about All-Star selections, how their seasons are going, just various little questions like what you saw today with Michael Sittler. So I think today was a good segue into getting ready for this, and it's something that we're very excited for. We have a lot to show you guys, a lot planned. It's still kind of in the works, so no date yet. It's going to be recorded and then it will be posted. So assume 2 weeks from now, that weekend will be that selection show, and then the All-Star Game comes up the 26th. So I'm very excited to looking forward to that.
Yeah, the fun thing about the All-Star Game is we kind of have a lot to do with that in sense of like preparation and everything. So we'll have a lot more interesting things to the skills competition and the game itself, to our broadcast that you guys typically don't see in games, or we're just mainly focused on that one main camera. We'll have different camera angles and things of that sort. So it's kind of that once in a season sort of thing where you look forward to it and you don't want to give too much away because there's certain surprises that we probably don't even know just yet.
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty good idea. Sure. There's a lot of things that we have in the works, and it's a time for us to experiment because we love interacting with you guys. From us, everyone here that works at the company, the kids that we've met and have talked to and interacted with, you guys make this job so much fun. It's so worth it. You allow us to have creative freedom and freedom to do things that create cool experiences for you guys. So we're very excited to take this opportunity on December 26th and everything that's going to come with it, and use it as a way to promote you guys and promote our league and our channel and this company and everything that this entity is, because it's very special, and it's special because of you guys and the talent that you possess. So we just want to try to return that favor and make this a special thing for you guys, because it's no small feat to be selected to such a prestigious thing as the All-Star Game.
No, absolutely, and the coverage that we're gonna be able to provide for you guys, we're honored to do that for you guys too, and it's kind of a sense of us trying to give back and trying to make this as fun, as enjoyable as you guys, and not try and make this a sense of like a chore or anything in that sense. We want this to be a fun, happy, and uplifting environment for all parties involved.
It shouldn't be. This is absolutely one of the biggest rewards and one of the biggest, no pun intended, stars you can put on your resume. So definitely something to look forward to. We're going to get that into the works over the next couple weeks. We'll be taking in the All-Star selections shortly. I hope we'll get that in the works, and then we'll be reaching out to some of you if everyone's listening. And then we'll be, inviting you down. Probably going to be doing it at the rinks. That's the initial thought of where the alternate site is. Not going to do it here. Don't want to, this is like, it's LISN HQ. It's like the Fortress of Solitude. We're not, we're going to make this fun. We're going to spruce it up. We're going to go all out, pull out all the stops. It's going to be fun. The All-Star Game is going to be fun. We're going to have laughs. We're going to tell stories, jokes, whatever, the whole 9 yards. So I'm very excited for it. And just to add to the fun of the stretch that's going to come up in terms of games here on the LS Sports Network.
Absolutely, yeah. Like we said last episode, pretty much you go on the channel every day, there's something going on, whether it be Nassau, Suffolk. We got a couple PAL games that we've been doing lately, so it's always an exciting time over here.
And if you want us to cover you, please give us some notice. Yeah. And if you want it, yes, you have to pay. You have to pay. That's how this works. So DM the account, please. But do it a week ahead of time. 2 weeks ahead of time. We'll work something out for you guys. We want to cover you guys. Yeah. It's not, it's not a matter of, they're not going to cover us. We do want to cover you guys. We want to be able to give you guys coverage and, games, and we appreciate suggestions greatly, but we just need the time to be able to figure all this out. There's a lot that goes into it. But which is why we're very excited about the All-Star Game, because there's been a lot of time that's gone into this, and it's going to continue to grow. So it's right there. We're on the doorstep. It doesn't seem like it's right there, but it is. It's been in the works for a couple weeks, so finally glad that we're able to share that with you guys. And we look forward to producing it all and letting it rip on YouTube.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's it for us today. Hope everybody enjoyed their Thanksgiving, had a happy, healthy holiday. Ate a lot of food. I know I did. And I can't wait to see how the rest of the season's going to unfold. We got, 9 games 8 games for each team, 2 months left of hockey.
Yep.
It's playoff time, everybody, so we'll have a couple more episodes, and we'll even have a playoff show down the road, a little playoff preview show, and maybe some other surprises, so it just means you got to stay tuned. You never know what you're going to hear when you tune in to Lisn Ot. But I think that's going to do it for us from the Lisn HQ. We will catch everybody next time for the All-Star Game Selection Show. I do believe that is what's going to be next. But until then, we hope to see you for all the exciting action coming up on the LI Sports Network. Tune in to our social medias at Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook at LI Sports Network for all the exclusive content over there. And until next time, hope everybody enjoyed. Vinny Matula and Dylan Flynn for everybody here at the LI Sports Network. Catch you next time.